All right, it is time for Fantasy Football Now. I am Jeff Fitoff Tito. Follow me on Twitter at FitHappens. And he is Chad Rank at Chad Ocho Rinko on Fantasy Sports Now, powered by DSP Media. And we got a lot to get into today. We'll start off with some news, and then we'll get into some strategy stuff when you're drafting your teams and when you're starting a league or whatever. But first, let's talk about the news of the day. There's two things that came out, Chad, that I want your reaction on. There was, 2 weeks ago, you sent me a text that said Dalvin Cook to the Jets. And he said, hang on, wait, let me look. You checked other things and said, wait, maybe not. And it wasn't official. But now Dalvin Cook did visit the Jets. It feels like it's real, right? Like, don't you think that Cook now is going to the Jets?
I think so, because he tweeted out he said something where the odds are high that he's going to be there.
Right.
So that's probably a done deal unless something happens, but I would not be surprised if Dalvin Cook this week ends up as a New York Jet.
Okay, so let's assume. Let's just both assume right now Dalvin Cook goes to the Jets. Tell me where you think his value is, and what does this do to Breece Hall?
So I think it gives Cooks more value than he was because you just weren't sure, and so you were kind of drafting like he's going to get picked up. I don't know where. So
by somebody, right?
Yeah, and so he was like probably 7th, 8th round, I'm thinking. So I think going to the Jets, it's still kind of murky with Breece Hall there, but I still think he's probably now 4th roundish. He's probably there where like Miles Sanders and stuff, he's kind of in that range. I don't see him going like in the top 2 rounds just because of Breece Hall. But he's gonna get drafted a lot higher now.
Right.
Now with Breece Hall is going into the 2nd. So I think he falls a little bit. I think he's still in the 3rd, but it's going to be weird. They'll probably end up one of those deals where like all those Patriots running backs were, where they just get drafted back to back.
Sure.
And you just hope, because I think they're both going to see time. So it's one of those things where you want to have one just in case one gets hurt or something, but I think it's going to be it's probably going to be a pretty close 50-50 timeshare, especially second half of the year. I think Cook maybe starts the season off pretty strong, letting Hall come back. So I think if you're drafting Cook, after the first couple of weeks, look to flip him for something if he's looking good.
See, that's interesting now, because you mentioned Miles Sanders. Let me ask you this first. You're picking somewhere, wherever you're picking, whatever round it is. Let's say it's the 4th round. And Miles Sanders, who look, Charlotte said he's a 3-down back, right? I mean, I'm sorry, Carolina. Say Charlotte.
Right. Yeah.
Carolina said he's 3-down back. If you've got an option between those two, you've got Miles Sanders or Dalvin Cook. Where do you stand on that?
I still go with Sanders just because he's going to be the guy there. And I think they're pretty comparable, I think, of production of what they can be. Just because if Cook would have ended up somewhere better like Miami, then obviously I would have gone Cook. But if the Jets, I still think that he's got it's such a weird situation with Hall. So if you knew Hall was going to miss like the first 6 weeks, like, hey, we're going to put him on the pup list, then you draft Cook probably in the 2nd round, just because he's the guy that team I think is going to score. They're going to have a lot of goal line chances with that defense. So I'm not saying not draft Cook. But just kind of it's one of those things we talked about last time with Fields. Like if Cook's in the 7th round, it's still obviously I'm going to jump all over him. But if you're having to waste a 5th round pick for him in that backfield, then it's like, do I do it or not? So and like I said, it all depends on the makeup of your team, who's still available there. But it's interesting to say the least.
So Cook he's not definitely going to the Jets, but there's a lot of speculation that once he meets with the Jets, he will sign with the Jets, and that could be the case, which allows the Jets the opportunity to bring Breece Hall along more slowly in his recovery progress. Well, you can wait longer, and maybe we'll end up on the pup list, and then Cook is the guy for the first 6 weeks, whatever, and we'll see what happens. Cook's had the last 4 years been really good for Dalvin Cook. So it's an interesting conundrum as it comes to Dalvin Cook on that one. I'm not sure. I think I would obviously look in any draft you're doing, wait to do the draft as late as you can. I know in our league, Chad, we're doing it August 27th for us. I would tell anybody, wait as long as you can to do your draft, because you want to have all the knowledge you can possibly have, so it's not a crapshoot when you get there. I like Dalvin Cook a lot. I think that if Dalvin Cook goes to the Jets, if they put Breece Hall on the PUP list early on and say, look, you're out for the first 6 weeks, whatever, Cook could seize that job. And I would probably be a guy who would draft Cook, wait 3 or 4 weeks, and then dump him someone else. Like, let him get 3 or 4 good weeks in him, dump it to somebody else, and then make a move as far as getting somebody else in there. But I love Dalvin Cook with the Jets. But we'll see what happens with that. And obviously, there's so much going on with that. But keep track of all the news. Now, the other news, Chad, Jonathan Taylor, who, okay, so running backs are getting screwed. We can agree. Everyone's got to say, yeah, running backs get screwed. They are totally screwed because of the way the CBA is set up. And who was it? It was there was a couple of players. There were a couple of players who came out and said, I think it was one of them would have been Saquon Barkley. Josh Jacobs came out and said, like, hey, this is stupid the way this is set up. It bothers us. Paraphrasing there.
Right.
And then Jim Irsay from the Colts says, oh, hang on just a second. You guys negotiated this. You know, it's what you guys said you were going to do. I think it's kind of like whining now after the fact. And since then now, Jonathan Taylor has requested a trade from the Colts. How does that affect how you would draft Jonathan Taylor? In a redraft league, how does that affect how you would draft Jonathan Taylor?
I think he's still end of the first for me, because just because they requested it doesn't mean they're going to do it. If they do, a team that's going to want to take Taylor is probably going to need a running back, and they don't have one, like Miami. Sure. So he's still going to end up in a probably a good situation. In most teams, Jonathan Taylor is going to be better than every running back on their roster.
Yeah.
I think it's probably more of a play to maybe try to get a deal done now, I think, on Taylor than traded. Although he might want to get out of there with a rookie quarterback on his team and stuff. So
a rookie running quarterback.
Right, exactly. So, and then I was looking, like, if you're the Colts, like, then I don't know. Like, it was such late news. I just found out about it like 15 minutes before I got on here. So, I just looked at their backfield. Like, they have, I think Zach Moss would be the guy next up. They did draft Evan Hull, who I think people were kind of buzzing about just as kind of a sleeper if he would have fell somewhere. So, I just don't see the Colts do it unless they end up, getting somebody that they can plug in. Like, if they traded with the Bengals and got Mixon in return or something.
I was looking at teams that could possibly grab him, and I feel like obviously the Colts would not trade him in the division. So you can rule out the Texans, the Jags, and Texans, Jags, Texans, Jags, Colts, right? Yeah. So they're not going to trade within the division. They trade Jonathan Taylor. The Ravens maybe, because of the fact they've got, Dobbins is pissed off. Dobbins wants a long-term deal, better money, which is not going to happen because of his injury history. The Ravens, they just signed what? They signed Melvin Gordon. They've got Gus Edwards there as well. The Broncos intrigue me as a possible landing spot for Jonathan Taylor. The Broncos are intriguing to me. So are the Cowboys in Dallas. Mm-hmm. So I think those are intriguing, but it's just, and I've seen all these different columnists put out things about ways to help the running back situation, but they did sign the CBA this way. It's what they did. They signed it. The players, the Players Association, NFLPA as a collective signed this agreement to what they're doing. So it sucks what's happening to running backs. I understand why they're pissed off. I totally get it, but they're kind of stuck.
They are, and they don't really have a leg to stay. There's not, like, if they all decided, hey, we're all striking.
Yeah.
They've got the USFL guys. They've got, like, I remember when Dearness Johnson stepped in Cleveland and it wasn't horrible. Oh. So I think there's guys that are around, and then you got to think. I don't think you get all of them. I just think you get some of these high dollar guys, and you got guys like Zach Moss. Like, fine, I'll go ahead and play.
If we all need new running backs, we'll be okay, right? If every running back strikes to their starters, that's fine. We'll all have backups.
Yeah, it's not like you and I are going to be getting calls. They have guys that'll play, so it's not like back. So I think it's more noise right now than anything else, and I think I bet you Irsay's getting calls though. I mean, there are certain teams. I think the Cowboys is kind of an interesting one.
Hey,
I
the
mean,
Chiefs
Pollard's
too.
there. Then the Chiefs, I just don't know. Like the Colts are in such a weird position too, because you don't really want to do it in conference, but they're not going to be competitive for a couple years, so it's not going to hurt them if they ended up throwing them to the Chiefs. But it's not like with, I think, with, you get like 2 number ones and probably a 2, and you probably get a player. So
God, if I'm the Raiders though, I'm picking up the phone right now.
yeah, and if I'm the Colts, I'm like, give me some, like, seriously, like if you could get the haul you could get for Jonathan Taylor, could be substantial. So it's interesting. I think it's just noise right now.
Right.
Like I said, I still think if he doesn't get traded, he plays, no problem. I still think Jacobs probably comes back to play, but he's the only one I would be concerned about sitting out for a significant amount of time.
All right, so let's talk now. It's a little fantasy 101. If you're somebody who's just now starting in fantasy football or trying to get in a league or starting a league, whatever, and there are so many different strategies involved in this. It is such a chess game. If you do it the right way, it's a chess game. If you're with a bunch of idiots, it's checkers. But if you're in a good group, it's a chess game. And the first and foremost thing, like, and this is for me, Chad, like I always tell, and I'm usually the commissioner of leagues I'm in. There's only, I think, one league I'm in this year where I'm not a commissioner as of now. But know your rules, right? Like that's the big thing is because it's a big deal if you're a super flex. Super flex means you start a quarterback at flex if you want to. 6-point passing touchdowns is so much different than 4-point passing touchdowns. Look at the yards per reception, reception yards, the bonuses, if it's PPR, half PPR, no PPR. Look at all of the rules and find those things out and try to find the value in that. If you've got to know the rules though specifically. When's the trade deadline? When's the are lineups locked on Thursday or they're locked on Sunday? When are lineups locked? What's the waivers process? What are the trades? All those like the trade rules, all those things come into play, and you've got to know that, right, Chad? Like I make sure I am totally like anal about the rules when it comes to our league that we're in.
Yeah. That's the number one thing, because like you said, 6 points for a touchdown pass is huge, and it elevates the quarterbacks.
Yes,
so high. And even if you're doing like the defenses, like if they give you like some crazy 20 points or something for a touchdown, like you move them up, but the yardage and stuff like that, if like quarterbacks rushing, that's why they're higher. I remember when I first got in our league. I went away from it. Like the first year I made the playoffs, and I have not been great since. But I remember that when I was looking at
hey, you're a good owner though.
Yeah, I am. I'm fun. I'll trade with anybody. I'll trade if my kid was in the NFL. I'd trade him if it was worth it. Unless he was a kicker, then I'd keep him. So, but I remember looking at the rules, because we have like 2 quarterback categories, 2 running back categories, 2 receiver categories, and then it's just total points. So you 7 head to head. You win 4 categories, you win the week. So I remember looking at it and going, quarterbacks is probably the easiest place to win because it's the most consistent. And that's why that first year I ended up with Luck and Breeze and I made the playoffs, but I haven't really, I kind of either just went away from that, but it's like you win 2 in our leagues. If you can get, that's why Brad was so good this year. He had Mahomes and Allen at quarterback. So if you can win one of those position like if you could dominate that, then all you got to do is win 2 more categories, and like then you got to look at receptions is one of our categories for receivers. So if you just get a bunch of guys that can catch passes, I don't even care if they don't get a ton of yards. If and that's the other thing with PPR, like running backs that can catch on the backfield, huge. Receivers are huge, because you get a guy that gets 10 receptions, that's 10 points right there.
Yes,
so know your rules, and then draft teams that can exploit that. So, and don't be afraid to go against like lists or what other guys do, or ADP. And that's the other thing too. Know where you're drafting, and the other thing too is like keeping track of whoever everyone else is drafting. That's the one league down in Cincinnati. We do our starters and we do our bonus, but once you get like you start 2 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, and then 5 receivers. Once a team gets their first 3 running backs, then you can't draft another running back to the bonus round. So if you're sitting there and it's just you and 2 other guys that just need a running back, and you're fine with the 3 that are left, I just wait till the last pick of the regular draft to pick it, because if I don't care who I have left, so there's no sense of wasting like an earlier pick on a running back when you just know I can just wait till the end to get them.
That's a huge part of it too. Yes, is knowing what everyone's drafting too. And Chad, with me, like if I'm in and I consider the one league, the first league you're going to get, the league is what we call it.
It's
that league right there is a big money league.
Yeah.
So I take that very seriously. If I'm in a league where it's like, oh, it's a $10 entry fee, whatever, that one, then I'm going to draft. Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to win, but I'm also going to draft for guys I like. You know, like I will take more. I'm like, if it's cost me $10, $15, whatever it is, I'm a Steelers fan. Wait, there we go.
Yep, there you go.
Then I might take Pickett earlier than I should, or might take Deontay Johnson earlier than I should, whatever. So know what your room is too. And by the way, know who you're drafting against. So you and I both know in the league that we're in, we know there's a couple of Buckeye homers. Well, most of us are like Ohio ties and all that. And so you'll see Ohio State players go off earlier than they might go off in like a league of guys in California or something. And so know your league mates, know who their favorite teams are, who their favorite, where they're at, like as far as their alumni and all that, and have an idea of those things. Because you and I both know, Chad, in our league that we're in, the league, there's a couple people who draft Buckeyes way earlier than other people.
Exactly, because we're here in Buckeye country, and that's huge. Right. Like if you're in a league with guys that you've known for a long time, like the Cincinnati League, you just know how guys draft, and they're gonna. Most people are gonna continue to draft the same way. Although my buddy that runs that league, he and I were talking. We were always like heavy running back early, and then we've been talking about like here in the last couple of years, like receiver, quarterbacks. That's maybe the way to start going. So that's what you got to look at. And then just terminology. We'll talk a little bit about that stuff. That's the one thing I've had to learn doing, betting baseball is like, I had no idea, I love baseball, but I had no idea what WOBA was, they start talking about, exit velocities and stuff like that. So you got to kind of, dig into that. So kind of understand when you start hearing us talk about things, go look it up because it's the interwebs has everything. So if you don't know what someone's talking about, look it up and then kind of dig into like why that's important or if it is important.
And all that depends on too, like your level of involvement with the league. If you're there to have fun, that's one thing. If you're there to make money, that's another thing. So all those things. By the way, two more pieces of news. The Colts they're saying they will likely not trade Jonathan Taylor. Also, Sonny Michel with the Rams retired today.
Wow. Okay.
5 years in the league.
I was gonna say he was not that old. He was an Alabama guy, I believe, right?
Yes, he was. Yes, Sonny Michel retired also. All right, so when you're going to a league now, Chad, so you're drafting for your league. It's your first time, and I don't know which one. I don't know if it matters too much, but what are some of the strategies that you employ or see to employ, or what are some things that you look at and say, this is how I'm going to do it as far as drafting strategy goes?
A lot of it has to do with, I think, where you're drafting. So, if you're like, I got to get a receiver in the first round, but you're drafting later in the first, you're better off maybe getting one of the top end running backs over a guy like Diggs or Lamb, and then just getting a receiver in the second round. So I think draft position is huge on employing that strategy. And then I think practice on mock drafts, different strategies to see, like if you say, hey, I really want Kelsey because he could just outscore the next guys by 6 to 10 points, and that's a huge advantage in one position where you're starting one guy. Draft that Kelsey and see who's there in these rounds, how that looks, and then if you draft it and go, I didn't like how that looked, then draft again and go a little different to see, because you're like, I guess running backs are really falling off. So I think practicing, drafting, and then just with your position knowing that's huge. I think what your position in the draft is, and then you kind of want to draft backwards sometimes, if that makes sense. So if you have the strategy, hey, I want to go, 0 running back, or I want to go Kelsey. Let's say you want to go Kelsey. You want to kind of look and see, okay, who's going to be there, especially if you're or if you're wanting to go Jefferson. Let's say you're at the one, and then you're at the turn. You have a long. Those are the hardest ones. You've got all those picks to wait, so you can't kind of figure out. I can maybe get this guy because you've got like 20 picks between you. So what you want to do is kind of look at, okay, do a mock draft, like see who's there in like the 4th, 5th round for you, because that will tell you where you want to draft on the 2nd, 3rd round. Because if you think, man, I took Jefferson, I better take a running back with one of these spots, but then you get to the fourth and fifth, like, oh, there's two running backs I like. I could have gotten, I could have had like maybe Garrett Wilson and St. Brown, and I still could have gotten Sanders and, somebody there. So kind of think of that too. Sometimes you got to look a couple rounds ahead, especially if you're at that turn where it's just so long to wait. Where if you're at the 5, you can kind of figure out those 8, 9 picks or whatever, but at the turn it's hard. So sometimes you got to look in those later rounds first and be like, okay, what's that look like? Okay, then that's going to determine how I'm going to draft the 2 rounds earlier.
That's what the draft spot where you're at is the big key on that, because look, if you're at 1 in a 10-team league, you're not getting until 20 after 1, right? You're picking at 20 next. So you've got to know, if you take Justin Jefferson, which I would totally endorse in a PPR league, then you're going to have to wait till 20 and 21 to take your next 2 guys. Then you got to wait again until 40 to pick your next one. So there's a huge gap in there on where you're going to pick. And so the drafts that you do, the mock drafts, and you and I both know this, Chad, I think you would also agree with this, that let's say you do 20 mock drafts. 5 of them probably are just stupid that you can throw out the window on one side, and so you got to like take an average of those, because sometimes people sign up for mock drafts on ESPN, which is where most of us go. We're Yahoo, but most of us go to ESPN, I think, for mock drafts. And some of them are just not legit. Some guys are just out there, auto picking or whatever, and you can't then take a kicker in the 4th round or a defense in the 5th round because it's the highest points or whatever. So you can't take them all as the gospel.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and there's times that people I know have done that. Like, it's been a long time ago where 3rd pick, they took some knucklehead guy and then they just auto draft the rest of the time. Sometimes too, you got to watch when you're drafted late at night, there's not a ton of people. So you have like maybe 3 of 10, and then all the rest is computer. So it's just going in the order. So it's not going to give you a true test of that. So like I said too, like if you're drafted 1 and you really want to do a Kelsey draft, I mean, you can do it. I wouldn't suggest it at 1, but maybe look to trade down if you're doing that.
And at PPR, what's the highest you're taking Kelsey?
I'm not a big drafting him in the first.
I'm not either.
I think even PPR, because if you figure you've got Jefferson, Chase, Cup, then you've got McCaffrey, Eckler. Those 5 are probably going to have as many, if not more, receptions to Kelsey, and then they're in prime position. So that puts them at 6. I think 6 is probably the earliest, because then you're looking at, Kelsey over like Bijan, Taylor, Barkley is really what you're looking at there. Because then even I would take him over guys like Diggs and Lamb, maybe AJ Brown and Devonta Adams. I mean, that's what you're looking at the end of the first. So I think 6 is really the highest that I would take him.
Yeah, I think lower half of the first for Kelsey is where I would take him if I and that's, again, it depends what goes in front of them, but I think that lower half of the first is where I'd probably look at Kelsey. He has certainly been the greatest tight end the last couple of years, but at some point he's got to slow down. So let me ask you about this now too. You see some guys endorse the 0 running back option, where you pick off receivers, tight ends, quarterback, whatever, before you start drafting your running backs, and you wait. And this year, if I'm drafting middle, I might go with that strategy. Just because I don't know how many true great number 1 backs are out there. Like, I'm not sure. We got to wait and see what happens with Jacobs, what happens with Jonathan Taylor, obviously with his trade request and all that. That could change things dramatically. But I feel like I've never done this before. I don't recall doing this before. Maybe I have, but I don't recall ever doing the 0 running back strategy and waiting to pick them up later on. Do you recall doing it? Do you think it's a smart option at times?
I think at times it can be, depending on what your league does. I think what happened is, I think one time somebody did it and it worked out. Like, I remember one guy won our league, and it was when like you'll remember this, like when Michael Turner left the Chargers and went to the Falcons. No one really knew, because he was back up, and so he went late. I think he drafted a rookie that just went nuts. So he drafted like 3 running backs late, won our league. I think that happened. I think you can sometimes do that, but it's not a strategy I like, just because it's weird too, because some people think zero strategy is like you're not drafting, like I think it technically is like you're not drafting running back to like the 6th round. Some people say, well, I can draft in the 4th round. The zero, that's not really zero. You're like getting your 3 receivers, your tight end, and your quarterback. I think if you're doing zero running back, so I think it depends on the season. So it could be something where, you know, especially now though, that you know, there's so many running back by committees, but I think a lot of the zero running back is really luck. Like if you drafted, you know, you could do it this year with getting like Kareem Hunt, Leonard Fournette. You could get like Damian Harris. Let's say you got those 3 guys late, and like Fournette lands somewhere and get like he lands in Miami and ends up being the workhorse. Hunt ends up going, like it could work out, but I think you're relying on a lot. So I think if you're doing the zero strategy, you better get guys that are in a timeshare or just load up on rookies.
There's been a couple times, Chad, where I was like, before the draft started, like I'm going zero running back. But then I get to like my 2nd pick. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's still on the board. I got to take him. I can't pass on this guy, even though it's my strategy. Look, I can't. This guy's here in the 2nd round. I got to grab him, and it totally screws things up for me. That's why I say I don't think I've gone the zero running back strategy before, just because I feel like there's always a guy in the 2nd or 3rd round that's got more value that I end up taking.
Yeah. Well, that's a huge point that you bring up, and I'm glad you did, because if you go in with a strategy, make sure you have like exit strategy. Like you may go in there saying I'm going this, and then you just, like you said, you can't pass this guy up at the value. Like let's say Jonathan Turner falls to like I'm going zero running back, but then Jonathan Turner's there at the 208.
Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, somebody Jonathan Taylor at the 208, and you're like, you know, so make sure you have that strategy. And that's why another thing we can talk about at some other time too, but like when you're making your lists, like just don't have like, oh, my quarterback, running back, kind of do them. I've been doing tiers lists for a while, just so you know, like, okay, all these receivers are here that I'm okay with. There's only one running back, and just go with your highest guy. Like even like, and so that's a good thing. Like don't, just because you went in with a strategy, don't just stick to it because that's what you did, because that's going to really, you're not going to draft well. Be able to be flexible and change your strategy based on who's available, especially early on.
You got to be ready to turn on a dime and do something different if it changes that way. But I mean, it's fine to have a strategy going in, but be open to changing that strategy depending on how the board falls, because you might have somebody like I've been in leagues before where it's like 4 points for a passing touchdown, which is what we consider a standard league. And you see somebody take quarterbacks early on to the point where like there's 3 or 4 quarterbacks off the board by the time you're picking 2nd. And then all of a sudden there's a great running back there, or maybe the top tight end or the top receiver, whatever is falling down to you. And you can look at it and say, okay, I know I said I was going to do this, but now this happened. The board is forcing me to react this way, and then make the change and do it. You know, I've seen guys that go like just different strategies, and it's okay. Have your strategy, but be willing to change on it based on how everybody in front of you drafts. As far as drafting a quarterback, now, we both know there's a huge difference based on scoring. If it's a 6-point passing touchdown, quarterbacks soar to the top. They're the ones you're going to take early. The Superflex League, 6-point passing touchdown, my first 2 picks are quarterbacks every single time. If it's 6-point passing touchdowns and Superflex, my God, I am taking quarterbacks, 1st and 2nd. So know that right there. If it's a 4-point passing touchdown, my quarterbacks fall down a little further. What do you think in a 4-point passing touchdown league? What do you think you'll do as far as when to draft a quarterback?
So I usually am not. I'm never going to be the first guy to ever draft a quarterback. But the thing is,
right,
and you kind of hit it earlier too with what we were talking about before. You kind of always want to be at the beginning of the run. Like you don't want to get caught like, oh, everyone's taking running backs, I got to get one, because then you're going to end up passing on a higher value at another position. Mm-hmm. Quarterback, like I said, with quarterbacks, because if you go back and look at, just do your own research, like the difference per game scoring from the number 1 quarterback to like the number 12 quarterback is really not as great as it would be from like your running back 1 to a running back 3 or 2 or 3. So that's the things you got to look at too. So I'm never going to draft a quarterback first. I'm usually going to try to fall in that 5 to 10 range, because especially this year, if you're looking at Fields, Herbert, Tua, Lawrence, even Dak, Deshaun Watson. Those 6, I'm okay with having as my quarterback 1. Now, if it gets to the point where those guys are falling, like then I'm like, I don't know if I want to get stuck with Goff or Cousins or Rodgers as my 1 in a 1 QB league, because then it's going to be something where, okay, I'm taking Cousins. Then I feel like I got to draft like a backup quarterback earlier, just in case.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, if you end up with one of those out of the top 8, maybe if all of a sudden you're the 9th guy drafting a quarterback, you've got to be more diligent on your backup quarterback just because you're not sure.
Right.
And Cousins is a great example. Cousins has great numbers. They just lost Adam Thielen, but they did pick up Jordan Addison, so we'll see what happens with him. But if you're drafting, you don't want Cousins to be number 1 without a solid number 2. And I don't know who that solid number 2 will be at that point. You mentioned Goff, in Detroit offense. We're not sure on that, but there are so many different elements of that you have to consider when you're looking at that. But yeah, with quarterbacks though, it's like know your scoring system, because I'm telling you, 4 points or 6 points is a huge deal for a passing touchdown, and Superflex is a ginormous deal.
Yeah, Superflex, you got to get your quarterbacks early. I was in a Superflex. It was just free. It was me, my buddy, another guy from church, and then a bunch of the kids, our kids and their kids and stuff like that. So it was Superflex, and none of the kids really, I think, knew about it. And I got quarterbacks early. I dominated pretty much the entire year.
Of course you did.
Because I'm going against high school kids. They don't know what's going on. They don't have a podcast, So they have Superflex, because if you're not playing a quarterback in Superflex, then you're just doing it wrong, because quarterbacks are just going to score the most points. A funny story though. One quick story about that, because we did it back in '94 as our first draft, and of course, we didn't have the kind of stuff we knew back then. And so the very first guy ever picked in that Cincinnati draft was Morton Anderson, because the one guy Tom was like, well, they scored the most points. And I'm like, did you read the rules? So it goes back to scoring. Like, I don't think he realized that there was points for receptions and stuff like that. So he's back in the league now. So we all just bust his chops on that. Morton Anderson was the very first guy drafted in our draft.
Okay, well, Chad, so the first guy I ever drafted was Brian Sipe. In 1980, I'm in the third grade. I'm in 1980. And we had a teacher. His name was Bruce Stassworth. Nickname, it's the coolest thing. His name was Bruce Stassworth. He let us call him Stass. Okay, so we called him Stass. Didn't have to call him Mr. Stassworth. He was Stass. And Stass tried to get this group of guys that we had to learn about math. And so what he did was we did a draft every Friday.
Oh, nice.
Me, Stass, and 5 other guys. And we just draft teams, go around and draft a team. And it was like 7 points for passing touchdown. Any touchdown was 7 points.
Okay.
You had kickers but no defense. But anyway, and then every week you had to bring the newspaper in with you on Tuesday and compile your stats.
Okay.
And so it was changed. So the very first pick I ever made was Brian Sipe, Cardiac Kids with the Browns.
Nice.
But that's when I first started. And Chad, I was in a situation too later on than when I started doing it. Early 90s, we actually paid a service to compile our stats for us and send it off to us. They would mail it to us when I was in the league with Porty.
Yeah.
Porty used to be the commissioner of the league, and Porty we paid our league fees, and included the league fees was postage because he would mail the reports out every week. You had to call his number and leave a voicemail if you wanted to pick somebody up on waivers and be the first one in, all these different things. It is so much fun.
Yeah.
But know your scoring system, know what it is, and get all that. The more you know, the better off you're going to be. So let me ask you this. We know that now we've got an 18-week season with 17 games for everybody. How much will you consider bye weeks when you're drafting?
I considered bye weeks a lot most of the time I drafted, because I was like, man, I don't want to like all my running backs being off. Sure. And I got to pick up some guy. And then I heard on a podcast somebody say that they didn't really care about bye weeks, because if all my stud guys are on the same bye week, then that's just 1 week where they're all gone, and that's a week I'll lose. And then I've got them the rest of the year, where if you have all your studs on different bye weeks, then you're each of those. So if you got like 4 studs, if there are 3 of them on bye week on 1 week, you're really just down that 1 week. Where if all 4 are at different bye weeks, then though you have 4 weeks where you're not at your full strength. So I really don't look at bye weeks too much at all anymore, especially if you can pick up, like if you have waivers and stuff like that, because I figure if they're all off 1 week, then that guy that's playing me hey, you're probably
Nice
going to
win.
win. Yeah. But
Right.
then, because that mindset was just different. Like, oh, yeah, like I'm going to have one bad week, but I'll be full strength with all my guys the rest of the time rather than trying to fill these guys I need to fill. So bye weeks, I don't really look too much on. Although I saw there's like a week 14 bye this week. So I don't know if you do any teams are doing playoffs that early. It doesn't matter because it's the Cardinals and the Commanders. So you're not relying on those guys to make the playoffs. So it doesn't matter. But yeah.
Damn it, Sam Howell.
It's all
Chad, I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Like I look at it, I don't when I'm to the last like 3 rounds of a draft or end of the auction, whatever. If you're doing those things, then I might look at bye weeks at that point.
Yeah.
But the first 12, 13 rounds, I don't care. And if all my guys are off the same week, it's actually a blessing.
It is.
Like you said, if they're all off, that's okay. That's one bad week for me. Whereas other people got to struggle for like 2 or 3 different situations. They've got to like find fillers to put in there. If I don't have to worry about it, except for 1 week, I'm fine with that. That doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah. What's weird, this I saw too, like, I don't know what the NFL is doing. Like week 8 and then week 12, which is Thanksgiving, no buys. So there's 2 weeks in between. All like it's like, and it's too long. Like 5 to like there's too many weeks with buys. Let's just take like 6 teams off a week, have it done in 5 and throw 7 a couple. Just get it done.
My idea, Chad, that they won't take. I know they won't do it, but my idea is what you do is halfway through the season, you take a week where everybody's off.
Yeah.
Okay. Week 9, no one plays, and say to college football, here's your week.
Yeah.
Okay. You can do it all. You can have you own Sunday.
Yeah.
You can own Sunday, Sunday night, Monday night. You want to own it? You've got it. We're taking the whole week off.
That's great because
like that.
Yeah, because the teams that get a bye in week 5, they're really behind the 8 ball late in the year because they had such an early bye week. And then do it when like the World Series is going on. Like just like all right, fine, do it. And then everyone's on the same playing field. Do it halfway through the season, and that would make the most sense.
It seems like it's easy for me to do that. But there's no buys the week of Thanksgiving this year.
No, I don't think there was last year either. Because I think because they're doing the 3 games on Thursday, they want to get all the monies they want, which would go well with your theory. Like we have 1 week we're not doing anything,
right?
And then we have full schedules the rest of the week. I still wish they'd get as much as like Thursday night games. I really wish they'd just make a double header Monday nights.
Me too, man. I'd be fine. They won't do it, but I'd be fine with giving it a Thursday double header every Monday. They got 3, I think, double headers this year.
Yeah,
on Monday nights. But yeah, I would do that as well. So we're like less than a week away from the start of the Pro Football Hall of Fame game with the Jets and the Browns, which we know no one's going to play in it.
No.
And it's going to be I'm not going to watch it. I'll have it on, I think, but I won't watch it. Will you watch it at all or not?
Like we have 6 kids and we homeschool, so it's like we don't have cable, so it's like I just every Monday night too. Even with ESPN, I'm just watching my phone, like refreshing to see it's like the old school ways and stuff. So I probably wouldn't if it was on. Like I never really watched a whole lot of preseason. Even I was more of like, let me just look at the stats afterwards and go from there. But like if it's on TV, I'm watching all the regular season games and playoffs. Like I just cannot not watch it.
I think like what I always do with the Hall of Fame game, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see football. And then like 2 minutes in, I'm like, okay, I think I got to mow the lawn or something. Something needs to happen outside or something. I'll figure it out. Yeah. And then I'll follow it for honestly preseason. All I look for is injuries.
Exactly.
I don't look for anything. I don't look for any. If somebody does a Tuffy Rhodes like for the Cubs and it's 3 home runs opening day in preseason, I don't care.
No,
I want to see if anybody gets hurt, if anybody plays, whatever it is. And Joe Burrow, he's out several weeks. I don't think he'll play at all in the preseason. Most guys will not play in the preseason, and so I'll just like kind of brush it off, like
right, exactly.
It's a good background noise.
Yeah, it's just nice to know it's there.
Yes, go very close on that. All right. I'll tell you what, Chad, next time we do this, let's talk more about strategies and about starting up a league and what you got. We'll do more ADPs. You're going to do another, let's see, we'll probably do another podcast here tomorrow or the next day. So hopefully you get another 20 or 30 mock drafts in, depending how long you're on the bike at the Y.
Exactly.
But this has been Fantasy Ball Now, again, on Fantasy Sports, powered by the DSP Network. Thank you for tuning in. He is Chad Rank. Follow him at Chad Ocho Rinko. And I am Tito. Follow me at That Happens. We'll do it again next time. We got so much to get into. I cannot wait for draft to start. Chad, have a good night, brother.
You too, bud.